The Grand Council chamber of the Galactic Alliance wasn't supposed to smell like fear. The massive room, with its high crystal ceilings and floating platforms, was designed to impress, not to trap the nervous sweat of 50 different alien species. Yet here they were, the most advanced civilizations in the known galaxy, trembling. "The machines have taken 3 more systems," announced First Speaker Reed, his translucent body pulsing with red lights of distress. "Our best weapons cannot reach their factories. The environments they choose, they're impossible to operate in." In the back corner of the chamber, Junior Council Member Green, who wasn't actually green, but humans would later call him that, twisted his 4 hands nervously. He had an idea. A terrible, desperate idea that would either get him promoted or exiled. "Speaker," he said, his voice barely a whisper, then louder. "First Speaker." The chamber went quiet. Junior members weren't supposed to speak during crisis meetings. The chair recognizes junior member. "Ah." First Speaker Reed's lights flickered in embarrassment at forgetting the young member's actual name. "Thank you, Speaker. I have a suggestion. Let's hire the Deathworlders." The chamber erupted in shocked whistles and horrified color changes. Hiring humans. The creatures from that terrible planet called Earth. The very thought was almost as scary as the machines themselves. "Explain," commanded Reed, his curiosity overcoming protocol. "The machines operate in conditions we consider impossible: extreme heat, crushing pressure, toxic atmospheres. But there's one species that evolved on a planet that regularly tries to kill them. They call rain refreshing. They eat poison for pleasure. They break their bodies and get stronger. They are the humans." 5,000 light years away, James Walker was having a very bad day. His apartment's cooling unit had broken, again. At 95 degrees Fahrenheit, most alien species would consider this a lethal environment. James just found it annoyingly sweaty. He sat at his workbench, tinkering with a broken mining drone, when his computer chimed. New message. Probably another local repair job, he thought. The message was anything but local. URG Galactic Seal Contract. CE King. Human Engineering Specialist. VOM-MP NSHLAN. Beyond your imagination. Danger LEVL. Extreme. Survival PROBABILITV. Unknown. NTURESTED. James laughed. After 15 years in deep-sea oil rig repair and 3 tours in the resource wars, extreme danger had lost its sting. He was more interested in the beyond your imagination part. His rent wasn't going to pay itself. He hit reply. "Tell me more." Back in the council chamber, the debate raged on. "They're primitives," shouted one counselor. "They're unstable," cried another. "They're our only option," Green stated firmly. "Our probes last exactly 2.3 minutes in the machine factories. The atmosphere is acidic, temperatures exceed 300 degrees, and the pressure could crush our strongest ships. But humans, they built cities on top of liquid rock. They dive into crushing ocean depths for fun. Their athletes run in conditions that would kill us instantly." First Speaker Reed's colors shifted to a deep blue of contemplation. "And you found one willing to help." Green's display screen showed James Walker's reply, along with his service record. "Not just willing," Green said. "He's perfect. Engineering expertise in extreme environments, military experience, and most importantly, he's bored. Humans are at their most effective when they're bored." Reed studied the human's image. Such a fragile-looking creature, all soft flesh and brittle bones. Yet something in those eyes. Was it madness or confidence? "Send the transport," Reed ordered, "and pray to the void that these Deathworlders are as capable as you claim." As James packed his tools, he had no idea that 50 of the most advanced species in the galaxy were counting on him. He was just happy to have an interesting job again. The fact that the job might kill him, well, that just made it more interesting. Sometimes, the most dangerous thing in the universe is a human looking for excitement. The alien transport ship captain nearly had a heart attack, all three of them, when James Walker started tapping on the vessel's window. The human had gotten bored during the 2-hour flight and decided to step outside to check the hull plating. In space, without asking permission. But, the radiation. The captain sputtered through the ship's communication system. The vacuum. The cold. James' voice crackled back through his suit radio. Great weather for a spacewalk, actually. Your hull could use some work on the port side, by the way. The captain made a note to tell the council that humans were, if anything, more terrifying than advertised. When they finally reached the Galactic Council station, a medical team was waiting in full protective gear. They hadn't quite believed the reports about human durability and expected to treat severe radiation poisoning. Instead, they found James whistling and asking where he could get a coffee. "You mean the toxic stimulant drink?" one medic asked, horrified. "That's the one. Extra toxic, if you've got it." Junior Council member Green was waiting in the main chamber, trying not to show his nervousness. The human was much taller in person, and those weird flat teeth seemed to show every time he smiled, which was disturbingly often. "Mr. Walker," Green began formally, "thank you for—" "Is that the problem?" James interrupted, pointing at a large hologram floating in the center of the room. It showed a massive factory complex on a red-tinted world, spewing what looked like a combination of smoke, acid, and pure darkness. "Ah, yes. That's one of the machine facilities on. Neat. When do we start?" Green's translator struggled with the word neat before settling on terrifyingly fascinating. "Mr. Walker, perhaps we should discuss the extremely hazardous conditions first. The atmosphere is highly corrosive. Temperatures reach levels that melt standard metals. The gravity is 1.8 times what you're used to. We've lost 37 probe ships trying tow." "Sounds like Tuesday at my old mining job," James said, pulling out a small notepad. "Actually paper," Green noticed with a shudder. "How primitive. Though the gravity might be tricky. I'll need to calibrate the tools differently." The entire council observation team watched in fascination as James began sketching designs and making calculations, completely unconcerned about the certain death environment they were describing. "One question," James said, looking up. "Why are the machines building there? Must be a reason they picked such a nasty spot." The council members looked at each other. In all their panic about the hostile conditions, none of them had thought to ask why. "We don't know," Green admitted. "Our probes never last long enough to gather that data." James grinned. That weird, flat-toothed grin that made several council members want to hide. "Well then, we better find out. But I'll need a team. You got any more humans around here?" "You want to bring more of you?" one council member asked, their color shifting to shocked purple. "Sure. Different specialties for different problems. Plus, humans work better in teams. We're social creatures. Social creatures who drink poison for pleasure and walk in space for fun," muttered the ship's captain, who was still filing his incident report. James spent the next hour explaining what kind of team he needed. The council members watched in growing alarm as his list of requirements included people who worked in volcanoes, lived under crushing ocean pressures, survived in frozen wastelands, built things in space without proper safety protocols. "And they'll all just agree to come?" Green asked. James laughed. "Trust me, they're probably as bored as I was. Just mention unexplored alien machine factory and dangerous conditions in the job offer. They'll be fighting to sign up." As the council members drafted the recruitment messages, James walked over to the window to look at the machine factory hologram again. Something about the layout seemed familiar, but he couldn't quite place it, like looking at a half-finished puzzle. "One more thing," he called back to Green. "Better stock up on coffee. Lots of coffee." Green made a note to order more toxic stimulant. After all, If they were going to trust their fate to Deathworlders, they might as well keep them happy. The council's meeting room had never been so noisy, or smoky, or filled with the smell of coffee. 4 new humans had arrived, and they were already breaking at least 6 station safety rules just by existing. James watched with amusement as his new team settled in, while alien observers tried not to faint. "So let me get this straight," said Kate Miller, balancing her coffee mug on her knee. "The pay is crazy good, we might die, and we get to poke around alien death machines." Her eyes sparkled with the special kind of crazy that only deep-sea welders had. She had spent the last 5 years fixing underwater oil rigs in pressures that would crush most submarines. "That's about it," James nodded, "though the dying part is optional." Bob Stone, the volcano researcher, laughed so hard he almost spilled his coffee. He was built like a boulder and had the burn scars to prove his years of working around active lava flows. "Optional dying. That's already better than my current job." The aliens in the room exchanged worried looks. These humans were treating certain death like it was a joke. Maria Torres, the Arctic survival specialist, was more interested in the station's environmental controls. "You call this cold?" she asked, looking at the terrified alien technician. "This is beach weather." She had spent 3 years living in Antarctica, and her idea of chilly involved temperatures that would freeze carbon dioxide solid. Mike Cooper, the space construction expert, was already taking apart one of the station's spare probe droids. "These are nice," he said, "but they're built all wrong for those conditions. Too delicate. We need something chunky, something that can take a beating." The alien engineers watched in horror as he casually redesigned their most advanced technology with parts from his toolkit. Junior Council member Green entered the room, carrying more data tablets. He stopped when he saw the chaos. Are they always like this?" he asked James. "Nah," James replied. "Usually they're much more excited. They're just tired from the trip." Green's color shifted to worried yellow. "This is them being calm. More or less. Hey team, gather round." Green's got the detailed mission info. The humans crowded around the hologram table, coffee cups in hand. Green tried not to think about how many safety regulations that broke. "The machine factory," Green began, pulling up the images, "is located here. The atmosphere is corrosive, yeah, but what type?" Kate interrupted. "Acid? Base? Both? I've got different welding setups for each." "The gravity will be the real problem," Mike added. "We'll need to reinforce everything by at least double." "Temperature range?" Bob asked, already pulling out his equipment lists. "Are we talking regular lava hot, or something spicier?" "The radiation levels," Green started. "Won't be a problem," Maria cut in. "I've got some great shielding tech from my Antarctic solar station days. We just need to adapt it for space." Green watched in amazement as the humans began solving problems that had stumped the Council's best scientists for months. They weren't just unafraid of the deadly conditions, they were excited about them. "One more thing," James said, pointing to a dark spot on the hologram. "We found something weird in the latest probe data." Before it melted, the team gathered closer. In the grainy image, something moved in the shadows of the factory, something that looked almost alive. "Now that," Bob said with a grin, "is interesting. Could be why they picked that location," Kate added. "Natural camouflage. Or natural resources," Maria suggested. "Those conditions don't happen by accident." Mike was already sketching a new probe design. "We need better cameras. And stronger lights." James looked at Green, who was trying to process how quickly these humans had gone from joking about death to solving complex engineering problems. "See," James said. "Told you they'd be perfect." Green watched as the team broke into smaller groups, each tackling different aspects of the mission. Kate and Bob were arguing about heat-resistant alloys. Maria and Mike were redesigning environmental suits. and all of them looked like they were having the time of their lives. Humans, Green muttered, are either the craziest or the smartest species in the galaxy. Why not both? James winked and went to get more coffee. The impossible team was ready. The machines wouldn't know what hit them. You want us to do what? First speaker Reed's body flashed with colors of disbelief. Test our equipment, James repeated calmly. In actual conditions, we need a place that's hot, high pressure, and nasty. Got any volcanoes around here? The council chamber erupted in nervous chatter. The humans had spent 3 days modifying their equipment, and now they wanted to jump straight into deadly conditions. Worse, they were smiling about it. There's a moon in the nearby system, Green offered. It has active volcanic activity, but it's completely uninhabitable. Perfect, the human team said in unison. 2 hours later, the council's observation room was packed. Nobody wanted to miss watching the test run, though many suspected they were about to witness a tragedy. The humans' transport ship landed on the volcanic moon's surface. Through the monitors, the council members watched in horror as the team stepped out wearing what looked like primitive protective suits. Temperature outside is 850 degrees Fahrenheit, Bob announced cheerfully. Feels like home. Gravity's not bad, Mike added, jumping slightly. Only about 1.5 Earth normal. Atmosphere's mainly sulfur dioxide and carbon dioxide, Maria reported. Good thing we brought our own air. Kate was already setting up her welding equipment. This is perfect for testing the new alloys. The acid rain will tell us if they'll hold up. The council's chief engineer turned to Green. Those suits, they can't possibly. Human engineering is different, Green explained. They call it overbuilt and chunky. They say elegant solutions die elegant deaths. On the surface, James was directing the team to set up their test station. The suits they wore looked bulky compared to the council's sleek designs, but they were built like tanks. Triple-layered, with backup systems for the backup systems. Council control, James radioed. We're picking up something on our sensors. About 2 kilometers east. Mind if we check it out? Before the council could argue about safety protocols, the team was already moving. Their heavy boots left deep prints in the volcanic soil. There, Maria pointed. Through the heat haze and sulfur clouds, something metallic gleamed. It was a machine scout, smaller than the ones in the factory, but definitely the same design. It hadn't noticed them yet. Hold position, James ordered. Mike, you got the scanner working. Reading it now, Mike replied, holding up a device that looked like it had been built from spare parts. It's using the heat for power. Smart design. The machine suddenly turned, its sensors detecting them. The council observers held their breath, expecting disaster. Kate whistled. Would you look at that alloy? That's giving me ideas. The machine charged, moving faster than something in that heat should be able to move. The council chamber erupted in shouts of warning. Bob calmly stepped forward and sprayed the machine with a thick foam from a modified fire extinguisher. The machine's legs froze mid-step. Temperature shock, Bob explained proudly. Drop anything hot enough into something cold enough, and things get brittle. The machine tried to move and cracked apart instead. Quick thinking. James nodded. Maria, grab a sample. Mike, help Kate check out that alloy. Council control, you getting all this? In the observation room, the council members sat in stunned silence. The humans hadn't just survived. They'd won, with tools that looked like they belonged in a museum. The readings from their suits, one scientist whispered. They're using the heat. They modified their cooling systems to generate power from the temperature difference. Is that where all our coffee went? Green asked, noticing the makeshift heat exchangers. James's voice crackled over the radio again. Hey, Council, we've got good news and better news. Good news is all our equipment works. Better news. He paused. We know how to get into that factory now. The team gathered around the broken machine, already discussing modifications to their equipment. They looked like children planning a game, not scientists in a death zone. Humans, first speaker read Pulse thoughtfully, don't solve problems like we do. No, Green agreed, watching Kate salvage parts from the machine while discussing molecular bonds with Bob. They don't even see them as problems. To them, it's all just fun. On the volcanic surface, the team packed up their samples and headed back to their ship, already planning their next move. Behind them, the volcanic moon rumbled, but none of them even bothered to look back. After all, they had bigger challenges waiting. The factory planet looked like hell itself. Rivers of molten metal cut through black rocks under a sky that burned red. Acid rain fell in sheets, and lightning sparked through clouds of metallic dust. "Looks cozy," Bob said, checking his suit readings from their ship's landing zone. "Remind me of my summer vacation spot." James laughed, but kept his eyes on the scanner. Their ship, rebuilt with Kate's new alloys and Mike's chunky design philosophy, had landed 3 kilometers from the main factory. So far, no machines had noticed them. "Remember," Maria said, double-checking everyone's suit seals, "gravity here is nearly double Earth's. Move carefully." "Environmental readings are crazy," Kate added, watching her instruments. "The air would melt your lungs, the rain would dissolve your bones, and the heat would cook you instantly." "So, Tuesday," James joked, but his voice was serious. "Everyone ready?" The team nodded. They had trained for this. Their suits were tested. Their tools were ready. Still, this was different from the test moon. This was the real thing. "Council control," James radioed. "We're moving out." In the council observation room, Green and hundreds of aliens watched through the team's cameras. Many couldn't believe humans were walking into conditions that would destroy their best ships. The team moved slowly across the brutal landscape. Each step had to be careful. The ground wasn't just hot, it was unstable. Sometimes liquid metal would burst up through cracks without warning. "Movement ahead," Mike whispered, his scanner beeping. Big signatures. Factory machines. They took cover behind a rock formation. Through the heat haze, they saw them. Massive machines, 3 times taller than a human, moving with terrible purpose. They were carrying something. "Are they building something?" Kate asked, using her enhanced vision gear to zoom in. "Those aren't weapons," Bob realized. "They're construction machines. Look at the tools they're using." James frowned. All their planning had assumed these were war machines, but this looked more like they're preparing for something. A sudden tremor shook the ground. Maria's suit sensors screamed warnings. "Gas pocket. Move." The team scattered as the ground erupted. A geyser of superheated gas and liquid metal shot into the sky. 2 machines turned toward the noise. "Well," James said, "so much for the quiet approach." But the machines didn't attack. They studied the team with glowing sensors, then turned back to their work. "They don't care about us." Mike wondered. "No," James said slowly, understanding dawning. "We're not important enough. Look at what they're building." The factory complex stretched for kilometers. Now that they could see it clearly, it wasn't making weapons. It was building walls. Massive, incredibly strong walls. "They're preparing defenses," Kate said. "But against what?" The team made their way closer to the factory, still amazed that the machines largely ignored them. Inside, the conditions were even worse. The heat was almost unbearable, even in their suits. Every surface glowed with heat. "James," Maria called out, her voice excited. "These markings on the walls. They're not random. They're data." Mike hooked up his scanner. "It's some kind of language. Mathematical. The machines aren't just building. They're calculating something." A larger machine approached them. Unlike the others, this one stopped. It projected a hologram, a star map, and on it, something was moving. Something massive. "Council control," James radioed, his voice tight. "You need to see this. The machines, they're not the threat. They're preparing for one. In the council chamber, the aliens watched in stunned silence as the hologram showed something approaching their galaxy, something that made the machines look tiny in comparison. "Well," Bob said, wiping sweat from inside his helmet, "good news is we know what they're doing. Bad news is we're going to need more coffee," Kate finished. The factory kept building around them, faster now. The machines had delivered their message. Now it was up to the humans to decide what to do about it. James looked at his team. Despite the danger, despite the revelation, they all wore the same expression. The look humans got when faced with an impossible problem. They were grinning. Back on the council station, the human team sat around a table covered with data tablets, empty coffee cups, and half-eaten snacks. They had been working for 18 hours straight, trying to decode the machine's warning. "So," James said, rubbing his tired eyes, "let me get this straight. The machines aren't our enemy." "Not even close," Kate replied, pointing to her calculations. "These factory designs, they're building a shield. A massive shield around this whole sector of space." Maria spread out the star charts they'd brought back. "Look at the pattern. Every machine factory is positioned at specific points, like a giant net." The council members watching the humans work were still trying to process how quickly things had changed. Just days ago, they thought the machines were invaders. Now, the real question, Bob said, munching on what the aliens considered toxic waste, but humans called spicy chips, is what were they built to protect us from? Mike had connected his modified scanner to the station's computers. The hologram the machine had shown them floated in the air, showing something massive moving through deep space. "Whatever it is," he said, "it's big enough to eat stars. And it's heading this way." James walked around the hologram, studying it from all angles. Something about the way the machines had communicated with them kept bothering him. "Hey, Green," he called to the junior council member who hadn't left their side. "What's the oldest record you have of these machines?" Green's colors shifted to thoughtful blue. "They appear in our earliest records. Most species thought they were just dead relics until they activated recently." "Dead relics," Kate repeated, then sat up straight. "James, are you thinking what I'm thinking?" "They're not just machines." James nodded. "They're a message, a warning left behind by whoever built them." Bob snapped his fingers. "That's why they activated now. They must have detected whatever that thing is getting closer." Maria was already typing rapidly. "The mathematical language they use. It's not just data. It's a story. Look." She projected her findings. The machine's markings weren't just calculations. They were records. Records of an ancient species that had faced this threat before. "They couldn't stop it," Mike said quietly, reading the data. "So they built the machines to protect whoever came after them." The council chamber had gone completely silent. The idea that the machines were not just guardians, but the last legacy of a long-dead species trying to save the future, was overwhelming. "But here's the really interesting part," Kate said, pulling up her scans of the machine factories. "Their design. It's not finished. Look at these gaps, these incomplete sections. It's like they're waiting for input," James finished. "They have the basic plan, but they need help figuring out the details. That's why they didn't attack us," Maria exclaimed. "They recognized we could survive in their environment. They were hoping we could help." Bob laughed. "So when we showed up in our chunky suits, basically laughing at conditions that kill everything else, we passed their test." Mike grinned. "Crazy humans walking into hell like it's no big deal. Must have been exactly what they were waiting for." James turned to Green, who was trying to process all this information. "We need to show this to the full council. The machines aren't the problem. They're part of the solution. But they need help. Our help," Kate added. "Human help. Because we're crazy enough to work in their conditions and smart enough to understand their purpose." Green's colors shifted rapidly as he thought. "You want to Cooperate with the machines. Better, James smiled. We want to finish what that ancient species started. They gave us the blueprint. Now it's our turn to add our own crazy human touches to it. The team gathered around the hologram, already starting to sketch modifications and improvements. The machines had built a perfect foundation. Tough, reliable, eternal. But it needed something more. It needed human ingenuity, human adaptability, human stubbornness. Council control, James radioed. We're going to need bigger coffee makers. This is going to take a while. After all, saving the galaxy wasn't just a job anymore. It was a challenge. And humans love challenges. 3 weeks had passed since the discovery of the machine's true purpose. The factory planet's surface was now crawling with humans in chunky environmental suits, working alongside machines that had waited millions of years for exactly this kind of help. "Pass me a plasma cutter," Kate called out, hanging upside down from a massive wall section. A machine helper, which the team had nicknamed Buddy, extended its arm to hand her the tool. "Still amazes me," Bob said, monitoring the temperature controls. A million years of waiting, and all they needed was some humans crazy enough to walk into hell. James watched from the command center they'd built inside the factory. After figuring out the machine's language, everything had changed. The council had called in more human specialists, engineers, programmers, construction experts, all of them crazy enough to work in conditions that would kill most species instantly. "Status report," Maria asked, entering the center with fresh data readings. "The machines have adapted 15 of our design improvements," James replied. "They're building faster than ever. Mike's new power system is working perfectly." On the main screen, they could see the bigger picture. The machines weren't just building a wall. They were creating a vast network of interconnected defense stations, each one powered by the extreme conditions that had scared away every other species. "Council control," James radioed. "How's it looking from up there?" In the observation room, Green and the other council members watched in amazement. The network was visible from space now, a glittering web of protection spanning entire solar systems. "Remarkable," First Speaker Reed transmitted back. "Simply remarkable. You've achieved more in 3 weeks than we managed in a year of study." "That's because you were trying to fight them," Mike said, entering with another stack of design modifications. "We decided to talk to them instead. Well, talk through engineering anyway." The machines had turned out to be surprisingly adaptable. They had the base programming from their ancient creators, but they could learn. And humans, it turned out, were excellent teachers. "Incoming signal," Maria called out suddenly. "The deep space sensors are picking up more detail about whatever that thing is out there." Everyone gathered around the main screen. The massive entity that was approaching their galaxy was becoming clearer. It wasn't just big. It was ancient, maybe older than the machines themselves. "Look at how it moves," Kate observed, having climbed back inside. "It's not just destroying everything in its path. It's consuming it, breaking down entire solar systems for energy." That's why the machines were built to work in these conditions, James realized. The extreme environments, the harsh conditions, they're the only places that thing can't easily break down. Bob grinned. "So we're not just building walls. We're building bunkers, safe zones, using the deadliest environments as shields." Mike nodded. "That's some crazy human-level thinking right there." A large machine entered the command center. Unlike the others, this one was special, the first to communicate with them. It projected a new hologram, showing their defense network's completion progress. 70% done, Maria translated. "We're ahead of schedule. Thanks to human coffee and human stubbornness." Kate laughed. James looked at his team, then at the machine. "You know," he said to it, "your creators would be proud. You didn't just wait for help. You waited for the right help." The machine's lights pulsed in what they'd learned was agreement. It had taken a species crazy enough to live on a death world to understand the wisdom of using death worlds as shields. Council control, James radioed. Tell everyone they can relax. Between human ingenuity and machine persistence, that big scary thing out there is in for one hell of a surprise. Green's voice came back, amused. The Council has officially decided to revise its definition of Deathworlder. It's no longer a warning label. It's a qualification. The team laughed. Around them, machines and humans worked together, building humanity's greatest contribution to galactic civilization, a defense system that used the galaxy's most hostile environments as its greatest strength. You know what this means? Bob asked, looking at the progress reports. Yeah, James smiled. It means that next time the galaxy stares at doom, they'll know exactly who to call, Kate finished. After all, sometimes the craziest solution is the best solution, and nobody does crazy quite like humans. The end.